When most critics or commentators talk about BoJack Horseman, they usually focus on the larger social issues of each season. To be fair, we need shows that tackle complex issues like race, gender, or politics, and a cartoon format lends itself more easily to absurdist moments like a ski race for the governorship or an abortion anthem. However, as a show, BoJack is as much of a lens into our society as it is a reflection of ourselves. Fans of the show don't connect with the main characters because they're commenting on contemporary culture or there are animal puns. They connect with BoJack, Princess Carolyn, Mr. Peanut Butter, Diane, and Todd because each character is grappling with what it means to be an adult. And to be an adult means to confront our past in order to look at our current and future state. I turned 24 recently, and I've had to come to terms with the narrative of my life so far. My relationship with my divorced parents, the need that I had to go to a school that cost me $50,000 worth of student loan debt, this feeling I have of wanting to close people off because I'm scared of them getting to know the real me. And I've come to realize that those experiences aren't necessarily unique, but that confronting my feelings is a part of being an adult. At its core, BoJack is a show that asks us, begs us to realize that our past may have shaped who we currently are, but it doesn't have to define who we can be. However, self-realization doesn't necessarily lend itself to captivating television, and so we see in each season the characters wrestling with how their past has consequences for their current actions. When we look at a story arc of a character, especially BoJack, their current problems, depression, substance abuse, low self-esteem, often stem from experiences from their past and how they're either unwilling or unable to process its effects. We see this most clearly in BoJack's relationship with his parents, especially with Beatrice.
Go out there. I can't. Can't? Lives in a house on Won't Street. You will not embarrass me in front of the entire supper club. I told them you were going to sing the lollipop song. But I don't feel like singing. Nobody gives a damn what you feel. You got an audience out there, and they want to hear you sing. Now, you want your mommy to love you. You go out there, and you do the only thing you're good for, which is singing the goddamn lollipop song.
And how his self-destructive behavior is often based on the lack of love or admiration he never received in childhood. In psychology, this type of behavior, wallowing in your past to justify your current actions, is often referred to as rumination. Dr. Susan Nolan Hoek-Sima was one of the leading figures on the theory of rumination and defined it as compulsively focused attention on the symptoms of one's distress and on its possible causes and consequences, as opposed to its solutions. People who tend to ruminate often either have a history of trauma, a perception of insurmountable obstacles, like a fear of never quite being understood by others, or they believe that they'll gain important insights if they just spent a little more time thinking about it. Everyone at some point or another has probably found themselves thinking about an old love or a career decision, but ruminating shouldn't be confused with reminiscing, which is often remembering the past from a more positive perspective. Characters on BoJack tend to ruminate rather than reminisce. While expressing our frustrations about unjust or unfair experiences is helpful at times, falling into a cycle of constantly thinking about what should have been instead of can be often leads to a series of negative effects. Ruminators often follow a predictable pattern. According to Nolan Hoek-Sima, rumination has 3 distinct phases. First, rumination enhances the effects of a depressed mood on thinking, making it more likely that people will use the negative thoughts and memories activated by their depressed mood to understand their current circumstances.
Oh, I don't deserve breakfast. Shut up. Don't feel sorry for yourself. What does that do? Get breakfast, you stupid fat ass.
Second, rumination interferes with effective problem solving, in part by making thinking more pessimistic and fatalistic.
I hock you with mom, then she can tell her things about you. Poison your own daughter against you. Is that what you want?
Third, rumination interferes with instrumental behavior, leading to increases in stressful circumstances.
One drink. Whoa, is it night suddenly?
In addition, Nolan Hoek-Sima and her partners argued that people who chronically ruminate will lose social support, which in turn will fuel their depression. When someone becomes so consumed by their past actions and thoughts, studies have shown that a person is more likely to become depressed, anxious, have a history of substance abuse, and go through a cycle of alienating those in their social circle. Sound like anyone? BoJack will always be in search of who he is until he can come to terms with his past and honestly confront the mistakes he's made. We, as viewers, know BoJack's past, both through his own self-loathing lens or flashbacks, and from the sucker punch of the penultimate episode of Season 4. But BoJack, up until this last season, has made the conscious decision to run away from his problems in history, often quite literally, instead of addressing them. It's fine to say you had a bad childhood, but to actually work to repair the damage and pain that comes with that?
That's too much, man!
The story arc of the latest season, spoilers ahead, is about the act of forgiveness. In a contemporary critique of celebrity culture,
Time is it right now? For female employees of one popular website, the answer is sexual harassment o'clock.
but on a deeper level, the 5th season is about characters being confronted by their past and being forced to either ruminate or address their challenges head-on, like adults. Can Mr. Peanut Butter recognize his pattern in dating younger, less mature women? Will Princess Carolyn be able to confront how her work has often taken center stage because she's unwilling to examine problems in her own life? Is Diane going to realize how her dysfunctional childhood has spilled over into her professional and personal relationships? We also see, throughout the series, that there are consequences for not confronting your past. This is most obvious in BoJack's guilt, yet inability to process Sarah Lynn's death. If we take a step back and look at the events that preceded his month-long bender with Sarah Lynn, we see that BoJack is experiencing an intense state of rumination. After finding out that his Oscar nomination, the one thing he believed would lead to some type of validation for his troubled childhood and decisions, is not actually real, BoJack is at his lowest point.
I could use an escape, couldn't you?
It's not really a good time.
Todd, I need this. You're my best friend, and I need you. Don't leave me now. Don't be like everybody else.
Because rumination often cycles into a destructive pattern of behavior, BoJack's logical conclusion is reaching out to one of the few people in his life that, as he puts it,
You know, sometimes it feels like you're the only one who really understands me, because how could anyone else?
as her father figure, he has to come to terms with how his own self-destructive behavior has played a role in her untimely death, something he's still not quite ready to do. We also see how the past has caught up when Diane finds out about Penny and uses it as inspiration for Filbert. BoJack becomes so disoriented between the past and the present, reality and fiction, that he goes as far as hurting someone in an attempt to cover up his wrong actions. Other characters also experience various forms of ruminating on their past decisions. After all, thinking about the past is often a very normal and healthy way to assess our current situation and problems. Diane's impulsive trip to Vietnam is an attempt to come to terms with their family heritage and divorce. Princess Carolyn's return to her hometown in search of a potential birth mother and has to relive her own traumatic childhood and her first miscarriage. The last episode of the season reflects BoJack's attempt to take ownership for his mistakes.
I can't lie about this.
I don't want you to be the most notable thing that ever happened to me. I don't want you to be the question I get asked in interviews for the rest of my life.
He isn't able to do that with Gina because he realizes his confession would go against the very thing that initially got him into the situation. But if he's not able to do that with others, maybe he's finally able to come to terms with his mistakes on a more personal level as he checks himself into rehab.
Hello, I am BoJack Horseman. Obviously, you know who I am because I'm very famous, and also we called ahead. And I am here because I need help.
One of the things I love so much about BoJack Horseman is how the show is able to take such complex personal issues that we all experience to some degree and puts it in a format that's not confrontational. I never thought I would find myself in a situation where an anthropomorphic cartoon horse would teach me about what it means to be an adult. But the more I face my own problems, the more I've come to appreciate that understanding my past and taking ownership of my actions is really the only way to move forward. After all, time's arrow neither stands still nor reverses. It merely marches forward.